Here I am back, and thank you very much for all of those of you who reached out to me who were concerned. I literally had to go underground for a couple days and pretty much stopping communication almost everywhere because after my CNN appearance, I received a whole bunch of threats on my phone and to my family and in my email and obviously on social media. And when that kind of a thing happens, you really have to go dark in almost every way. I tried to get back to those who reached out to me, checking up on me, but I also needed to gather my thoughts. I am as distraught as many of you are over the election. And part of that time, I reached out to several of you to get your take on what you thought we should be here at Stand Up with Pete Dominick moving forward. And several of the folks I heard from said they just can't deal with the news and the situation right now. And so you're turning away from media and news and political media and turning towards things that make you feel better and happier and more positive. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the brand new, at least this week and moving forward, at least temporarily until we figure out what the hell is going on, the very positive Stand Up with Pete Dominick. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking to all kinds of really thoughtful, amazing, inspiring people who have overcome serious adversities in their life, who are currently struggling and offering solutions on how to deal with everything. Because this week I learned that problems that were a 2 became a 9 after the outcome of the election. And so I realize collectively that we are struggling and we are scared and we are very uncertain about what to expect. But I'm going to do my best to be as positive as we can. And that is what I'm told many of you are looking for and hopefully will stick around for. How am I going to do that? Like I said, interviewing those experts. Plus, I'll be bringing you a whole bunch of clips that I think will be helpful for coping mechanisms, making you laugh, making you think in different ways than normal, the normal news clips. And finally, I'll be hosting 2 hangouts, 2 community hangouts every week for the next few weeks. See if that works for my schedule, see if there is interest in it, but they will be separate themed. One hangout, Monday nights at 8 p.m. will be about the news and the situation that we're in. Our regular Thursday hangout will be a lot more fun, and I will have special guests, and we will do fun things and have great conversations, and I'll think more about that. We'll stay away from news and politics. It'll be a positive place for you to be, for the community to be, a safe space for folks, and we won't have to be worried. I mean, we're going to be arguing about putting cranberries on salads, while also sharing positive stories, things that are working, welcoming, thoughtful, funny people, having a great time. I've got a whole bunch of ideas up my sleeve. If you trust me, I hope that you will go along with me as we try to figure out the way forward. So mark it down on your calendars. Mondays at 8, Thursdays at 8. Hang out with me. Welcome to new subscribers. Those hangouts are so valuable. So many people, they certainly were in the pandemic. You will not feel alone if you're a member of the stand-up community. Also, looking to do Pod Jam in March. That is back on, working about that and other gatherings. I'm even thinking about getting an RV and traveling around the country to find out where you live, learn more about folks, connect more people, create more safe spaces and secret attics and garages and whatever we need to do to help protect one another as we move forward, not only in a world of political disarray and fascism, but obviously in this hellscape that we have as a climate. We learned through people like Francis, who's living in North Carolina, what happened in Asheville with the hurricane. I mean, folks need support, and that is obviously not going away. The climate issue with the wildfires and flooding, hurricanes, all of it. So we're here for each other. I'm focused on this community, maintaining it, being there for you, growing it as much as I can with all the caveats and boundaries that come along with it. But so many of you have become friends and supportive of one another. You've got text chains, you've got emails, you've got each other's numbers, many of you. You've met and stayed at each other's homes. So we have an amazing, awesome, wonderful group of people here, and I'm very much looking forward to preventing fractures, creating love and light and community. I'll even be talking to my former therapist on the podcast this week. Very excited to have that conversation. You'll get to learn what I learned from the great Deborah Adamy so many years ago and how to practice loving kindness, and it's going to be awesome. I'm actually feeling really good about these ideas and so grateful to those of you who have suggested more to me, and I'm looking forward to brainstorming more about what we can do with our community and with this daily show that I am so committed to. So bear with me as we figure out who we're going to be, and by all means reach out and let me know how you can help and what ideas you have. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That is my email. All right, that is today's show opening. Now, again, throwing out the format this week, trying to see how this lands with you. I've got 3 conversations today. Wajahat Ali, Celeste Headlee, and David Rothkopf. I talked to all of them last week, shortly after the election. I think it was Thursday, most of these conversations. These are not the positive tone that I'm talking about having. I literally went for a run late Sunday and kind of came up with this idea about who I want to talk to and how I want to have these conversations. I think basically I still want to have a lot of the same folks on, but change a lot of the tone of the conversation. Certainly we'll still cover the same issues that impact you and your family with experts, as I always have. You know I'm going to do that. But that is not really what I did and what I was thinking about doing. I was just trying to unpack what happened with 3 of my favorite people. I also got Brian Beutler and Barry Ritholtz on tap for you. As always, tell me who you want to hear, what subjects you want me to talk about. The value of the show is the credibility of my guests, as well as my ability to get them on the show each and every day. Always welcoming new voices, new experts, new guests. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've overcome some amazing adversity. You will definitely be hearing listeners as guests on the show as you have many times in the past. So just going to play a few clips that are either funny or inspiring that I've heard over the past couple of days, read a couple things, and then we'll get to my conversation with Waj. Does that sound all right? Who am I talking to? Did you answer? That's weird. Okay, here we go. First, thought this was amazing. I don't remember this George Carlin clip. I guess this isn't necessarily fall in the category of positive, but it sure is entertaining, hilarious, insightful, and I guess, I don't know, painfully relevant. It's the greatest. George Carlin in a clip titled "The Public Sucks." Take it away, legend.
Now, there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Politicians. Everybody complains about politicians. Everybody says they suck. Well, where do people think these politicians come from? They don't fall out of the sky. They don't pass through a membrane from another reality. They come from American parents and American families, American homes, American schools, American churches, American businesses, and American universities, and they're elected by American citizens. This is the best we can do, folks. This is what we have to offer. It's what our system produces. Garbage in, garbage out. If you have selfish, ignorant citizens, you're going to get selfish, ignorant leaders. And term limits ain't going to do you any good. You're just going to wind up with a brand new bunch of selfish, ignorant Americans. So maybe it's not the politicians who suck. Maybe something else sucks around here. Like the public. Yeah, the public sucks. There's a nice campaign slogan for somebody. The public sucks. Fuck hope. Fuck hope. Because if it's really just the fault of these politicians, then where are all the other bright people of conscience?
All right. Well, I obviously don't agree with saying fuck hope, but I did love that clip. And I think it resonated because he was talking about the public. It's so easy to focus on people in charge, but I think what's harder to do is stand up, which is the brand of the show and what I will continue to do. Put yourself out there however you can. Don't give up. Don't fuck hope, but do whatever we can to support each other. You don't have to put yourself out there publicly the way I am. You could welcome someone who's hurting into your home. There's all kinds of things you can do to create hope. But still, I thought the point about the public needs to take responsibility was one that resonated with me. So that's why I chose that clip. Up next, one of my favorite podcasters and thinkers is Dan Harris. He's the host of the 10% Happier podcast. Of course, you have heard him here on this show. I've known Dan for a long time. I'm a big fan of him and his work, and meditation is such an important part of my daily life. Try to do it every day for at least 20 minutes a day when I wake up. But Dan is giving advice on how to talk to your bereft, distraught teenagers and frankly anybody else who is struggling. He quotes his friend Brene Brown, who you probably know. I thought this was interesting.
How to talk to a bereft teenager in tears. This comes from the Asheville Literary Society. I think as I read this, I think about something I heard on my podcast from the guest Brene Brown, for whom I have a lot of respect. And she was talking about the fact that one of the moves that we as parents make, and we do this with our friends and our colleagues, we do this with our spouses, this isn't just for parents, is we rush to fix things. And in some ways, actually, that can make the other person feel worse, because what they want is just to have their feelings validated. So Brene said this thing where she will sometimes say to her kids, I can't make this go away, but I can sit in the dark with you. And I like that. It reminds me of that, you may have heard me say this before, that great bit from one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, Parks and Rec, where Chris Traeger, the Rob Lowe character, is being super annoying to his baby mama, Rashida Jones. And she's super pregnant and feeling awful. And every time she complains about it, Chris runs in circles and tries to fix everything. When in fact, what she wants and what he learns to do eventually, after getting some advice from a smart friend, is for him just to say, that sucks. And sometimes that's the medicine. Now, I'm not saying that's going to solve all the problems today with anybody who's upset. But just to start by giving people permission, as I tried to do at the beginning of this convening of the Renegade Sangha, by saying it's okay. And again, that's not everything's okay. It means, it's okay to feel what you're feeling as a starting point.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Dr. Chaim Ganat, Between Parent and Child, is the most important book I read as a young father. And he talks a lot about acknowledging the pain, the anguish, the frustration, the embarrassment in your child. But the same thing for an adult. I, too, have been that way, always trying to solve the problems and save everybody, when sometimes all you need is, man, I am so sorry that happened to you at work today or at school today. And that person just wanted to vent and be heard and know that they're not alone. Often I would say, yes, that happened to me before. It's the worst. I bet you feel horrible. And so I love that advice as well. And now here's our own queen. This is Vicki Body Robinson. This is from last Wednesday night during our hangout, which I titled The Way Forward. Vicki showed us her inspiring positivity in the face of this horrible situation we now find ourselves in, as well as she always does. Here she is.
I don't have the time, the energy to despair. All of my energy has got to be directed to what can we do? Preach. And how can we make this better?
Preach.
But again, my issue is this. What my parents went through, I didn't have to go through. What their parents went through, they didn't have to go through. And we can go back generations and generations and generations. My issue is never going to be despair. It's never going to be giving up, because I don't have time to give up. I don't have the strength to give up. My strength has got to be for moving forward. So I'm going to figure out solutions. I didn't cry. I was sad. I was disappointed, because remember, I was always cautiously optimistic because, and don't be offended if you're new, but white people are going to do what white people do. They're going to protect white supremacy. And that's what they will call it, economics. They will call it hatred of the other, but it is to protect white supremacy. And anybody with 2 ears and 2 eyes, or half an ear and half an eye, see what this man is, what he represents, who he follows, who follows him, and who's part of his team. That being said, I'm girding my loins. I'm putting on my girdle. I might throw on a wig or whatever it is, but it's time to get to work. I mean, let's go. We're not going to lay down and let them take away our democracy. We're not going to do it. Let's go.
I have created a safe space for the whites who were triggered by Vicki just now.
And if you're triggered, get over it. Because this is not a time for your feelings. Your feelings were all day today. After this, it's okay. Let's strategize. Let's get in the trenches. Let's figure out whether it's Color Change or any of all of these organizations that are doing the work. Find something for your hands to do. This is what my mom tells me every single Sunday. If you can't figure out what to do to help make something better, figure out what your hands can do. What can your hands do? Who can you call? Who can you pressure? I don't have time for my feelings.
Yeah, there you go. That's our Vicky, and we love her, and she is so inspiring and so strong and smart and hilarious and a very, very good supportive friend of mine, often at our hangouts, and that was awesome. I love that. And a couple things I just want to read, which I think are great that I revisit, and one that I saw this week for the first time. Kim Nyborg up in Iowa sent this to me, and I love it. This absolutely describes who I am. I totally identify with this quote. It's attributed to Eminem, but I looked it up, and I'm not sure who exactly said it, but I love it. This is how it reads. You know what? I think I'm going to put music under this. I'm not a liberal snowflake. My feelings aren't fragile. My heart isn't bleeding. I'm a badass believer in human rights. My toughness is in tenderness. My strength is in the service of others. There is nothing more fierce than formidable, unconditional love. There is not a thing more courageous than compassion. But if my belief in equity, empathy, goodness, and love indeed makes me, or people like me, snowflakes, then you should know winter is coming. Woo-hoo! Do I love that one. Thank you, Kim. I gotta know who wrote it. I certainly do identify with that, and I know many of the rest of you do as well. I will say this. My feelings are fragile. I don't have a lot of resilience, so I come undone pretty easily and spiral pretty easily. I certainly have several times about different things this past week, and I'm okay with that because I'm building more resilience, and so many of you have helped me become stronger with your strength. So many of you have obviously had to overcome far more challenging adversity than I have. It helped me keep mine in perspective and just use the same resources, ideas to overcome it. So I will say that. All right. Here's another quote somebody sent me this week from Jewish Rabbi Tarfon. I mean, what other kind of rabbi? Rabbi Tarfon is where I see this. It's in something called Pirkei Avot. Can any Jewish folks listening let me know? Is that from the Torah? Anyway, here it is. I like it. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. I like this one a lot too. This, my dear, is the greatest challenge to being alive. This is it. To witness the injustice of this world and not allow it to consume our light. We cannot allow it to consume our light. I love that. Here's Bishop Stephen Charleston, citizen of the Choctaw Nation and a Native American elder in something called A Prayer for These Times. When they hate, I will love. When they curse, I will bless. When they hurt, I will heal. I am a servant of the light. I am not afraid of darkness. I will carry on with my work as a steward of this earth and of her children, all of her children. When they divide, I will unite. When they rage, I will calm. When they deny, I will affirm. I will simply be who I am, for that is what Spirit created me to be. Love it! My daughter Ava posted this on Instagram, which is heartbreaking but inspiring as well. She writes, as a woman, I am terrified. This election was such a harsh reminder that a woman could be everything she needs to be, but still not enough. The majority of this country has chosen hate over humanity. I am devastated to admit how foolish I feel to have truly believed in hope for the people. By the way, as her dad, that was an especially heartbreaking thing to read any young person writing. But then she goes on and pivots to positivity. She writes, I know this fight is not over, and I will continue to do my part until our voices are heard. But it is truly so disheartening to see the sheer amount of people that would vote against our basic rights. As heartbroken as I am, I will continue to have hope that love and empathy will persevere. As we enter this dark time, we have to remember that we can only get through it together. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need to talk. I hear you. I see you. I feel the same. You are not alone. That is my daughter, Ava, on Instagram, and I couldn't be more proud of her as much as it shattered my heart to read that from her. And, of course, I love, and often you've probably heard this one from me, quoting Ralph Waldo Emerson, finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it serenely with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. All right, just a few quotes that motivate me on a regular basis and that I've learned just the past week as well. And now let's go to some laughs. It's the Saturday Night Live was live this weekend, and they did find some laughs in the Weekend Update, which I wasn't too triggered by. So I wanted to share it with you, and then we'll get to my conversation, starting with Wajahat Ali.
Well, on Tuesday, we learned that Democrats actually don't know how to rig an election. Donald Trump swept all the swing states, won the popular vote, and Republicans took back control of the Senate. It's like we're living in a computer simulation, and whoever's controlling Trump has a cheat code. He's invincible. He's like a character in Grand Theft Auto who throws a prostitute out of a car and drives straight to the White House. But don't you guys worry. If I know Democrats, they're going to take a long look in the mirror, learn from their mistakes, and then run Biden again in 2028.
And how did I let y'all convince me that rural Pennsylvania would pick the Jamaican Indian lady? Clearly, I've been spending too much time with you white liberals and your goofy optimism. It wasn't even close. At one point, Trump was so far ahead, they put in Brawny. I mean, what the...
During Trump's victory speech, he promised that this will truly be the golden age of America. You know, because things turn golden when the sun is setting on them. It is believed that J.D. Vance may have helped Trump's numbers with Catholic voters, which is kind of crazy because J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism as an adult. And I'm sorry, you're not really a Catholic man unless you survived being an altar boy. My strategy? I disguised myself as a lesbian.
So y'all gonna let a man with 34 felonies lead the free world and be the president of the United States? That's it. I'm listening to R. Kelly again. I already do, but I'm gonna stop pretending I don't. If white people can elect their felons, I could dance to mine.
President Biden and President-elect Trump will meet in the Oval Office next week, where Biden will finally finish a sentence he started at the debate. With Republicans now in control of the Senate, there is a three-way race for majority leader between John Cornyn, John Thune, and Rick Scott, which represents the kind of diversity Republicans bring to politics. Gray hair, white hair, and no hair.
A new report shows that after Donald Trump was elected, the wealth of the world's 10 richest people grew by more than $60 billion. Yep, the richest people immediately got richer. But don't worry, I'm sure yours is coming soon, Earl.
Before the election, Trump said he would let RFK Jr., quote, go wild on medicine, which is what Democrats have been doing all week.
All right, there you go. Weekend Update. What did you think? How do you think about this opening? What if I did it this way, at least for the next couple of weeks, and shared these kinds of clips and quotes and comedy? Let me know. I really want to hear from you. It matters so much. Obviously, standupwithpete@gmail.com. I'd love to get your feedback. Obviously, share in our Discord chat, and we'll talk more tonight at 8 p.m. East at our subscriber hangout. If you are not a subscriber, you won't get the link. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Once you're in our community, and we'll welcome you with open arms, and we hope to see you tonight. All right, let me get started with my guests. Like I said, I recorded these interviews last week, and so these aren't exactly positive and as upbeat, but I'm very glad I got to talk with Wajahat Ali, Celeste Headlee, and David Rothkopf. I'm not going to give them long intros. You know who they are. You love them. Go support Waj on Substack. The Left Hook is his Substack. Learn more about it in the show notes, like every guest here on Stand Up. Let's do it right now with Waj. Hey now, there he is.
How you doing, man?
Okay, how are you doing?
Been better days, haven't slept. I don't cry, I don't shed a tear. I'm not one to ever cry. I don't mope. I always will fight until the end. But I've been saddened by the state of our country. I had more faith in our country, folks. I apologize to anyone who's ever followed me because you relied upon me for being optimistic and usually correct. My batting average usually was correct. I was wrong. I overestimated. I overestimated my fellow Americans. I thought it would tilt to Harris, which would give her 300 plus. Instead, it tilted right to Trump. And, I thought his campaign, he ran a terrible and winning campaign. I thought every gaffe he could make, he offended everyone he could. He was as vulgar as could be, incompetent, a criminal, a man who incited a violent insurrection. But we live in the United States of amnesia. And people don't care about the facts. They care about their feelings. And perception creates reality. Yeah. And something that you and I have talked about, and something you and I have tried to warn America about, and especially liberals about, is that we are dealing with a right-wing ecosystem. We are completely unmatched. We are overwhelmed by it. And if you don't believe me, yesterday at his victory rally speech, Dana White of the UFC came on, number one, which is friggin' idiocracy in the flesh. And number two, who did he thank? Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, and other right-wing YouTube quote-unquote stars who dominate the information ecosystem of young adults and who reflect how broken and uninfluential establishment media is. And that right-wing ecosystem created a reality in which people didn't see Joe Biden's very impressive domestic accomplishments. I give him credit where credit's due. Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Act, right? And instead, they felt like they were better off 4 years ago, and they were upset. And in the United States of amnesia, they decided to elect the person they had kicked out with a record 81 million votes 4 years ago. And so I think it's disheartening to know that not enough of our Americans care about democracy. Not enough of our Americans cared about women losing their freedoms. Not enough of our Americans cared about the vulgarian threat that is Donald Trump. The one positive, if any, that I have is, if I've seen anything in the past 10 years, there's constant realignments. The ground has completely shifted. No one knows anything. The establishment will not hold. The institutions are no longer trusted. Hillary barely lost. Biden won. Trump won. Which means there's a section of Americans, Pete, who are just perpetually dissatisfied and upset at the status quo. And you're seeing the rejection of the status quo across the globe, right? The incumbents are just losing. You saw that in the UK, even in Moodie lawsuits in India, right? And the big picture, in my opinion, is racism is still rampant. Misogyny is still rampant. There was that book and movie called No Country for Old Men. That's a pretty good country for old white men. Last three presidents that we'll have are Trump, Biden, Trump. And in addition to that, there are enough voters who just switch based upon their feelings. And the one hope that I have is if those voters that went Biden to Trump, maybe if we have a country left, maybe if we have an election left, I don't know, Pete, in 2026 and 2028. And if my prediction is correct that Donald Trump will F up because he is a chaotic, anarchic, reckless, incompetent vulgarian, and I believe MAGA, even though they have more polished extremists, I think they're petty and cruel. They have the knives out for each other. Finally, CBS News decided to publish today something they should have warned about, every single day, that Trump's economic policies are going to do what, Pete? Want to take a guess?
It won't be good for the economy or for anybody in particular other than people at the very top.
There you go. Taxes are going to increase. Prices of groceries are increased because he said my favorite word is tariff. The most beautiful word in the English language is tariff. Yeah. The trade wars and the tariffs are going to spike up the grocery prices for all those people. Well, hold on to your butts. You wanted a better economy. That's what you're going to get. Elon Musk admitted it last week that the middle class is going to go through some things. The rich, the oligarchy is going to benefit. Tax cuts for the rich. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel's, the right-wing frat club that runs America, and the rest of us, we have to do our best to resist, Pete. And, I've been going through it for an entire day. I didn't sleep. I don't know about you, but I had a Coke. I smoked some shisha, which is the closest it'll get to me having drugs. I'm going to watch the Warriors play the Celtics. I went and got comic books. I played with my kids. And, and right before I jumped onto your show about 10 minutes ago. I tweeted this. My daughter, I just came home. I looked at my 8-year-old daughter, Nuseba. She looked at me. It's a true story without exaggeration. She said, Baba, do we have to leave? I'm like, what do you mean? We have to leave, Baba. Trump won. He doesn't like us. Do we have to leave? And I didn't talk about this with her. I didn't talk about the election or anything. Kids are smart, Pete. They know. This is not a normal conversation to have with an American-born daughter. And I told her, we're not going anywhere. You're an American. We're not leaving. We're going to live right here. I'm your Baba. I'll protect you. And inshallah, Allah will protect you. So I have my fighting spirit, even though I'm exhausted. And I refuse to be cynical or apathetic because I have kids, Pete. I have kids. And so I will join whoever is willing to join me. And I will resist these mother effers. If indeed they go fascist, which I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And I will do whatever I can, using whatever small powers that I have, to keep pushing for the marginalized, for democracy, for the rule of law, and for our children to inherit a better future. I do not mean to give you a TED Talk. You asked me a simple question. That's where I'm at.
What are you most concerned about for you and your family?
Man, I was having a conversation with Mehdi, and I was having a conversation, with Ali. He tweeted this also. So, with people of color, a lot of white folks are like, it'll be okay. We'll survive it. Talk to women, man. Talk to people of color. Talk to, I just read this disturbing tweet. The LGBTQ plus communities, especially teens, have witnessed like 125% spike in these calls for their mental health. Because I watch football, and I don't know if you've been watching football. Targeted ads for the past 4 weeks. They, them, trans. That's all.
Right.
That's all he did. Yeah. So when a guy says Islam hates us, when a guy promises the Muslim ban, when a guy says he's going to bar Palestinian refugees, when a guy says there's going to be ideological screening for Muslims, when a guy cynically meets with Muslims but also dines with Nick Fuentes, a white nationalist, when a guy has Stephen Miller, who worked with the worst Islamophobes and calls anyone who looks like us the enemy of the people who are poisoning the blood, people with bad genes who come from shithole countries, and when you're in the public and when you're like me, foolishly, boldly taking on MAGA, the first conversation that I had yesterday, my parents were visiting. They didn't sleep. My parents were like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? That's the first thing my dad told me. Huh. You got grandkids. And my father today even said, he's an older man. He's retired. He goes, inshallah, somehow, I could get money for us. And then in 1 year, we can all go somewhere. And my wife was like, maybe, but, and so the fact that we even have this conversation, Pete, that's the conversation. I'm not the only one. DAnielle, my co-host, she said the same thing to me. She says, we're in the public eye. Where are we going to feel safe? Another host of a TV show, I don't want to give her name. You all know her. Black woman said she was unsafe going out to New York. She went straight from her hotel to her studio and back to the hotel to do her show. And so why do we think this way? Are we paranoid? Do we have TDS? They always say, Republicans always say, reach out to the Rust Belt voters. Maybe Biden should reach out in 2020. In 2016, reach out and understand why so many people voted for Trump. Reach out to us. If indeed Trump is a unifier, which he's not, but he promised unity. Why do we feel this way? Why? Why do so many of us feel this way? Maybe it's because the now president of the United States in January has openly unleashed a campaign of hate against us, said that we're rapists, invaders, criminals, taking over the suburbs, Haitian migrants are eating pets, enemies of the people, Islam hates us, I'll blame Jews if I lose the election, urban warfare wherever there's black cities, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, I'll unleash the Military Insurrection Act, enemy from within. Maybe that's why we feel this way, Pete. Maybe it's not TDS. And so, I know there's a lot of people are blaming Latinos and people of color. I get it. Majority of Latinos, I think when it comes down to it, you'll see the majority of Muslims, majority of black men. they went for Harris. He chipped away. That was always the plan. But, and I know your listeners might not like hearing this. We predicted it on your show. A majority of white women, Pete. You know how they went?
Yeah.
Majority of white voters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised by white voters. I just thought more white women. I thought more women based on women's issues and reproductive rights and the 2017 backlash, the Women's March. It was really hard to see how many women didn't maybe vote, or how many obviously white women, overwhelmingly women of color, voted for her and voted. Seemed.
And also, there's something that you and I have talked about, and you know this world very well because you're a comedian. Unfortunately, we need 1,000 more of you. The right wing broscape, the brosphere.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it.
Something that I've been talking about for a while. Something that you have talked about. Something that I've kept my eye on. I didn't underestimate the power and reach of the Tates, the Rogans, the Theo Vaughns. Dana White yesterday, folks, called them out by name. There was a woman, this tweet has gone viral. I shared it. Young college student, white woman at American University, who said, I voted for Trump because he would protect abortion rights. We're dealing with young people who live in this information, disinformation hellscape, who are post-literate, where they get their information from TikTok, Insta, Facebook, and YouTubes. And a lot of these bros go to these guys because they're comedians, they talk about sports and UFC, and overwhelmingly, and gaming, and overwhelmingly, it's what, Pete? A right-wing landscape. That's how their bread is buttered. The Andrew Schultzes and the Rogans and the Tates and the Theo Vaughns, right? And these guys, Pete, they don't listen to MSNBC. They don't read New York Times. The brokenness of our establishments and institutions, especially corporate media, is compounded by their utter lack of influence on young people. And what you and I have said for years is if we had $1 billion or millions of dollars, we would invest in a robust left-wing media infrastructure. Yeah. You got to fight fire with fire. And Democrats don't have it, and I don't know how we're going to win that. And Steve Bannon said, I always agreed with him, the enemy isn't Democrats, it's the media. He's been calling it for 10 years.
Yeah. We need to do better. Specifically, I think, talking to boys and men, the left. Richard Reeves writes about in his book about boys and men. He says, the left tells men to be more like your sister. The right says, be more like your father. Neither invocation is helpful. What is needed is a positive vision of masculinity that is compatible with gender equality. I don't know if you agree with that. I do, and I think that men like you and I need to do more to role model that healthy masculinity, if you will. And without, words like toxic masculinity or whatever, I think that Rogan and Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson have done a really good job at manipulating, connecting with the plight of young men, especially, and telling them why they feel the way that they feel, and blaming, women, us, progressives, liberals. Do you have any thoughts about how we can do better there? And then I'll let you.
Listen, man, I know people might not like hearing this. I think it's a combination of factors. Bernie, just to identify it. Bernie and Trump were onto something in 2016. There is an overlap between some Bernie and Trump voters, okay? Bernie actually offered policies, whether you agree with him or not, that took on the establishment, the 1%. And there was a rage against the establishment and the 1%. It really rallied a lot of workers, and especially some Latino voters and people in Arizona and Nevada. In 2020, that's where he made his gains in like the central and western part of America, right? Trump, white supremacy, grievance, disinformation, misogyny, but also, I will be a bulldozer. I will bring down the establishment. I will clear the swamp, which is all bullshit because he literally is a swamp, okay? You saw in this election the people who tilted to Trump, in addition to the misogyny and racism, which is the hallmarks, and it worked for his base and a few other people, and the disinformation and the anti-wokeness and yada, yada, was this dissatisfaction with the economy, this dissatisfaction with inflation, this dissatisfaction with the quote-unquote the elite. So he didn't offer any plans. He offered a concept of a plan. And the plans that he offered, as we talked about, are all going to be disastrous. But he tapped into that feeling of anger. And what we're finding out now with the results is people feel like they were better off 4 years ago than they are now. And they feel angry and upset about the economy. And they feel that he would be better. We live in the United States of Amnesia. So you can piss on the Latino voters and the black voters, and male voters, and the Muslim voters. But I think, and I will end on a hopeful point, if we see anything from the past 10 years, America is a fickle country. We went from, actually, let's go back 20 years. I was right about the 2004 election. I knew George Bush would win. I knew a lot of liberals were disappointed. I just knew this country. We went from 8 years of George W. Bush to something that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. The first black Muslim president, my brother Barack Hussein Obama. We go from Obama to what should have been the first female president, a Vulgarian like Trump. So you go from Trump to Biden, who wasn't my preferred candidate, but people were so sick of Trump, they're like, we'll go for Biden during a pandemic. We go from Biden now to Trump. If indeed we have a democracy and free and fair elections left, and I don't know, folks, I don't know if we will. There is room here to win over these voters. And if you look at down ballot races, look at Arizona. Gallego won. Yeah. Abortion rights won. Kerry Lake was rejected. Michigan, they held on for the most part, right? We had Angela also Brooks that won. We have 2 black female senators. We have 1 trans representative from the House. I think we won some state houses. Abortion rights, most of the places they won. In Florida, it was ridiculous because you needed a 60% threshold. They got 57%. We want to talk about misogyny and double standards. But that goes to show you down ballot. And if Republicans don't want to go full fascist, especially when they're in the House where it's going to be razor thin and elections are coming up in 2 years, they got to take some notice of that. They're like, oh, okay, we can't go full MAGA. We got to moderate on some stuff, assuming, of course, we have a Democratic election in 2 years or 4 years. And so this is where I feel like you need to realign. You need to, I'm sorry to say this, play hardball. Stop bear hugging Liz Cheney. Go to the mattresses. Tim Walz was winning when he called him weird. Why normalize J.D. Vance on the debate stage? I'll never understand. Terrible advice. I think I was on your show and I said that. Yeah. Don't try to win over these centrists. There's no such thing as centrists. Be passionate. Be bold. Create a villain. I'm just thinking storytelling now, Pete. Create a villain. Elites, billionaires, 1%. You know who's going to be surrounded by Donald Trump? Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. Yeah. When they fuck up the economy, and I rarely swear, and they will, within 6 months, you're going to get buyer's remorse. You go after, don't even say white men, billionaires and the 1%. They don't care about you. With that message and with the policies and with the passionate fighting spirit, Pete, tell me if I'm wrong. I think they can win over this margin that went to Trump.
I do not know. I hope that there are still normal elections. I can't imagine that with Elon Musk and all these other terrible people involved, they won't do whatever they can to make it very difficult for there to be free and fair elections. I don't know what that would be. That we wouldn't see, but it's hard to believe that we get to have another shot at electing people that is fair and secure and free and not influenced by somehow, the government itself. I don't know. I'm scared of that. But
yeah, man. And we're dealing with bad faith actors.
Yeah.
And look, man, Trump has a enemies list. These are vindictive folks. So we need each other. And I'll end on this. I've heard from a lot of black folks and people of color the following. I'm sure you've heard also, and you've seen it on social media. All right, this is what you want in America? All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. We did our part.
Yeah.
White folks and all these Latinos and Muslims and women who voted for Trump, good night and good luck. We're going to take care of ourselves, our families, our communities, black folks in particular, poor people in particular. We've been through this before. You figure this shit out, and good luck to you.
Right.
Yeah, and I understand that feeling. But once that anger, that righteous anger, which is deeply felt and should be expressed, dissipates, the only way out the only out of this is together. The only way through is together.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the coalition must hold. It's still very divided. He didn't like, I know the Electoral College popular vote, but it's not like he crushed by 12 million votes, right? He won by a few million, I get it. But he actually got less votes than last time. And I think, look, I'll say this. If there were smart Republicans and not extremists, which they aren't, they would run an economic populist agenda and actually like try to help people, and they could like run for the next 8 years.
Sure.
And they would abandon the white supremacist talking points, poisoning the blood, rapists, invaders, criminals. Just abandon it. You don't need that. But this is who they are. And so I believe that this is a time to fight. Take a day, 2, 3 days, 4 days, cry. I don't cry. If you do what you got to do. Get your mentals back, get your health back. Look at the big picture. And what we've been saying is even if she would have won, I said there was a long walk. This is a long walk. So this is the first step of the long walk, Pete. And I want to say this. It's a good fight. This is a good fight, people. In a strange way, we're blessed and lucky. I know people might not like hearing this. We're blessed and lucky to be part of a good fight, a fight that maybe, inshallah, if we win, we might lose the round. But if we win this long fight, it's for our kids, a fight for democracy, for freedom, for decency. We don't have to storm the beaches of Normandy like our ancestors did. We just have to keep speaking the truth, be decent, be caring, be empathetic, and look out for each other and be active. And where we can make the mark tangibly is local communities, your neighborhood. Run for office in your local communities. This is where you live. Create a firewall wherever you can and do not concede an inch.
I like being on the long walk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
There you go, Wajahat Ali. I hope you liked that, and let him know that you heard him here on the show. Go subscribe to his Substack, The Left Hook, and follow him on all social media platforms. He is a fighter and a friend and a great father and husband, family man, and I adore him, even if we don't always agree on strategy, on ideas. I love listening to him. I think he's a fearless guy, and he's awesome guy, friend in person in my life. So, we move on. Now it's time to get to one of my all-time favorite journalists. You've heard her on NPR. She's the author of 4 very important books, an expert on behavior, a really funny, awesome, thoughtful, curious person. It's time for Celeste Headlee. All right. Top of my list of people to talk to post-election was Celeste Headlee. Thank you very much for joining me. I know how hard it is to talk right now.
Yeah. I was talking to a neighbor of mine, and she said at least this time she's not suffering from the shock of 2016, because she says 2016 surprised her. This one actually didn't.
And do you share that sentiment?
I'm Black and Jewish, Pete. America's never going to surprise me by making a choice that is racist and xenophobic.
Yeah, and a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Are you wondering about what your role moving forward is professionally, much less even personally, to your friends and family and neighbors? Do you know what it is?
In addition to being a journalist, my entire scholarly pursuits over the past 15 to 20 years have been in human behavior. Mm-hmm. And my role, I think, is to try to help people understand what just happened without making the mistakes that we have in the past of blaming this on how a campaign was run or not run, either Trump's or Kamala Harris's, because we have evolutionary evidence explaining to us why the results were as they were. And we can't move forward until we understand why people do what they do.
So I'm glad that's something that you're going to be working on, and I will follow and read and listen to everything that you do around that. But do you think that's an easy answer right now in terms of what did or did not happen that led to the result?
So just 2 things I will focus on.
Okay.
One is Homo sapiens, our species, is strongly driven to form teams. We have known through research again and again that if you put two people and give them a task, a problem to solve or a puzzle to solve, or separate them out from other people, they will really quickly set aside a lot of their own preferences, a lot of their own values even, in order to form a more cohesive team. And they will quite surprisingly quickly, they will begin to feel a strong loyalty to this brand new team in a surprisingly quick, short amount of time. We know this. Journalists have known for at least decades that framing elections as something to be win or lost, in other words, gamifying them, covering them the same way we would a football game in terms of winners or losers, who's ahead, who's behind, what individual person has said the wrong thing, how did that play in this particular venue or arena, who's on their game, who isn't, etc. We have known that is digging into the unconscious biases and fears of our species in a way that is primal and beyond people's control. And we've known it's dangerous for a long time, and we keep doing it anyway, because preying on people's fears drives them to at least open your article. We know they don't read it all, but they at least look at it. They'll click on the headline. They'll share it out of fear. So when you create a team, and when politicians begin to create these loyalties to their team, people will put loyalty to the team above everything else. They obviously will put it above their country, their neighbors, even their own self-interests. And this is documented again and again. This is not me guessing. And this is what, look, I'm a journalist. I'm not going to tell anybody to vote for, but I can tell you what all of the evidence says. Yeah. And I can tell you the impacts of each candidate's proposals. And a lot of the people who voted for Trump on Tuesday were voting absolutely against their best interests. Let me just give you an example. I saw shared on Blue Sky this morning a woman who said her husband got called to a meeting in his little manufacturing plant in southern Pennsylvania today, and the president sat everybody down and said there will be no Christmas bonuses because as of January 21st, we have to have purchased 1 year's worth of supplies for our business, because if the Trump tariffs go into effect, we can't afford to get any of our supplies. Most of them come from China. And she lives in a town where it's majority Trump voters, and all of the workers were stunned. They had no idea. They thought China would pay for the tariffs, which is, and people tried to tell them that's not how tariffs work.
That's a crazy story right there.
Yeah. And I should say it was shared on Blue Sky. I have not seen it verified yet, but it's completely reasonable and could happen. Probably happened.
Were those did you say both things? Two things you said. You talked about
the second one, if we are going to point to someone to blame, we have to blame Fox News. And to that extent, we have to blame Bill Clinton, because he was president when we made a lot of changes in media coverage. We allowed conglomerates to buy up media to create massive networks. It also loosened the restrictions on what could be called news. And the majority of Americans have Fox. The number one most watched news source is Fox News, and the people who watch it often have Fox News only as their only news source. And I cannot say enough times that Fox News is not news. There are still some good journalists, some great journalists, even in some cases, working for the Fox News division. But the majority of the programming that you see in Fox News is not just not fact-checked. It's not just not evidence-based, but it's intentionally misinforming people. If there's one bad guy here, that's who it is.
You say Fox News, and can we say the media overall, and can we include social media, specifically Twitter, because when Elon Musk bought it, he was able to do all kinds of things with it. But the bottom line is, if he's saying insanely ridiculous things, constant conspiracy theories that he was spreading, if people believe the candidate as well and his surrogates about things that clearly aren't happening, can't happen, kids going to school as a girl, coming home as a boy, those kinds of scare tactics, the inability for people to understand what the truth is, or I feel like we can blame, we shouldn't, we'll get to this next, blame Democrats or the candidate. We should blame, as you said, media, and specifically the media that is conspiracy-laden media. It's all conspiracies, and people believe it, and the candidate sells it.
So here's another thing to understand about human behavior. Okay, so the United States, I'm pretty sure I've not looked at 2024 statistics, but if we're not the highest inequality of any industrialized nation, we're one or two. What that means is the United States has a massive number of people who are in desperation every single day. We have millions of people who are below the poverty line. We have millions of people who are homeless. We have millions of people who are $200 away from a major financial crisis. And that has been getting worse and worse and worse. We have essentially, in order to create a society in which billionaires are possible and there's no ethical way to become a billionaire, right, that means you are draining that money away from millions of people in order to put that money into one person's bank. So the United States, in order to have somebody like Elon Musk, has to be putting tens of millions of people into a state of desperation. When people are desperate, they're in amygdala thinking. They are basically viewing the entire world solely through fear and threat, and they are not making good decisions. It generally shortens their life by a lot because they're not making decisions that are considered. They're not making decisions that are safe even for themselves. They are desperate. And so when we talk about people who are ready to believe all these conspiracy theories, I'm not excusing anybody because the information is out there and it's not hard to find. I'm not excusing anybody because we're basically talking about people who it felt good to believe these things. It was triggering all of their dopamine neurotransmitters, etc. I get that. So this is an excuse, and it's just an explanation that when you make people desperate, they make stupid, rash, unsafe, harmful, and damaging decisions.
Right. I asked you right before I hit record what you thought about blaming the candidate, the campaign, and the strategy, specifically the losing candidate, Kamala Harris. And you said, we're about to see all kinds of think pieces. And then I interrupted you and I said, save it for the air. So pick it up there if you don't mind, my friend.
Yeah, we're about to see a lot of think pieces and op-eds and columns explaining that. I just saw one this morning saying Kamala Harris tagged too far to the right, and that's what sunk her career. She lost all these leftists. That's not true. Frankly, Kamala Harris is more liberal than Barack Obama. Barack Obama was quite a centrist. So that is not true. We're about to see people saying that if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had supported Palestinians and stopped the Israeli genocide that's occurring, it would have changed things. That is incorrect, because any of the people who appreciate what's happening in Palestine also know Donald Trump would be worse. That doesn't even need to be fact checked. We know that. And there were many Palestinian leaders who came out and said, this is why I'm voting for Kamala. Yep. Anyway, because we only have one alternative, yep, and it's worse. No, this has nothing to do with what Kamala Harris did or didn't do. And I'm a journalist. I don't trust any politician. This is not about me supporting one politician or another. This is just not about how well the campaign was run. Because look, Donald Trump ran a horrible campaign by any measure. Yeah. We've never had a candidate who has lied about so many things, like China having to pay for tariffs, something that's so easily disproven that if voters had done 1 inch of research, they would know that's a complete and utter lie. When I'm talking to audiences and I'm giving speeches or workshops on this very topic, trying to have conversations across differences, I ask them 3 questions. I say, do you care if your beliefs are true? Does it matter? And so let me ask you, Pete, does it matter to you if your beliefs are true?
It's everything I am.
Okay. So what if one of your beliefs that you hold right now is not true?
I would want to find out why I thought that.
Okay. What's the likelihood that everything you believe is true?
Unlikely. It's highly unlikely that everything I believe is true.
So right now at this moment, you're wrong about something. Most likely. I'm wrong about something.
Not at this moment, but a few minutes before and then in a couple more minutes. But right now, I'm talking to you, and I'm very right that I should be.
And this is the crux. Is if it matters to you that your beliefs are true, then you have to ask yourself, which one isn't?
Right.
Because one of them isn't.
Right.
And there's a lot of things going on here, but there's a lot of people ready and willing to believe things that aren't true, and they don't seem to care.
That's very true, and it's very true of all different types of people politically, I think. It's fair to say, because I've constantly seen progressives and liberals believing things that aren't true. I've believed things that aren't true all the time until I do more digging and find out a different truth.
So I work the polls every election, and I've been a provisional judge for a while now. One of my neighbors said, if only Joe Biden hadn't said that thing about Trump supporters being garbage. So when I was working the polls, I had a Puerto Rican woman, naturalized citizen, come in, and we're not allowed, obviously, once they vote, we don't touch that ballot anymore. So I can't say for sure who she voted for. But as she was leaving, she put her ballot into the bag and shouted and started chanting, "Go Trump." And so my response to my neighbor is, Joe Biden's calling Trump supporters garbage had no effect because Donald Trump called Americans garbage again and again and again. So again, this is something that people are going to try to blame, and it had nothing to do with it. Because if that mattered, if people cared about a politician calling Americans garbage, they would also care when Trump does it, and they don't.
Yeah, they know who he's talking about.
They were talking about her. This woman, they were literally talking about her.
Yeah.
And she didn't care.
Yeah.
So she can't care if Joe Biden calls her garbage and she cares about that, but Donald Trump calls her garbage and she doesn't care?
Last question. I don't think I got to it. If it's not the campaign, if it's not because she didn't speak more to the concerns of Palestinian American voters or working class folk or have more policies, if it's not that she was hanging out with Republicans and campaigning with Liz Cheney, why did she lose? And why did she lose so badly? And maybe you don't think she lost.
We don't know we don't know how badly.
Fair enough. Why did she lose?
It was
a strike badly. Yeah.
For all the reasons that I just said, that the American public in general are desperate. We are broke. We are overworked. We are overpressured. All of us are in some way in danger of a crisis. Everyone has an existential dread in the back of their minds that something could go wrong. It could be disaster, because that happens here. You get a really bad medical problem and suddenly you're bankrupt and then you're homeless and then everything's over. That's an American fear. So that's number one. Number two, we have allowed a state of misinformation to replace our news. And I'm mostly blaming Fox News, but it's other media as well. Number three, even the credible media treats our elections as though they're games. And number four, the United States is incredibly sexist. And this I'm going to blame on American men.
How dare you?
Everyone else.
You're talking to
because
one. How dare you?
We are putting up even liberal, progressive-minded men, for the most part, and I'm, again, speaking in general, not any particular individuals, but in general, American men are tolerating a level of sexism that should be intolerable. They are allowing other men to say things about women. They are allowing other women to not hire women, to not promote them, and then excuse it by saying she's emotional or she doesn't have quite the qualifications. They are allowing a level of sexism in the United States that leads to exactly what we just saw.
Right,
because when you look at the people of color who voted for Donald Trump, it mostly wasn't women.
Right. And if that data is right about Latino men as well. And we can talk about,
and this, honestly, if you want me to talk about what has to happen over the next 4 years, I know what I have to do. Men you need to take this seriously. This has to be your work for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I already reached out to Richard Reeves. I've been begging him to do something to partner with me, much less come on the show. I like his work, and there's other people as well. I'm not sure what's right, but I'm very curious and passionate about doing more of that and just continuing to talk to men the way I have been. And let me ask you finally, you're a very thoughtful, creative, spiritual type of person. Is there a quote, a poem, or a practice that you have been employing?
Yes. I am hugging my dog as much as possible. I'm trying to get out of the house as much as possible and avoid social media. I've limited my social media use to 30 minutes a day or less.
Good.
And yes, I am making sure that I read poetry, that I am reading beautiful things of beauty that human beings have created. Because, again, I'm not going to tell anybody how to vote. My job is just to present people with the facts. But it's no surprise as a Black, Jewish, Buddhist woman that I did not vote for Donald Trump. I also have LGBTQ people in my family and trans people in my family. And so Donald Trump and his administration represents a threat to my family and the people that I love. So that should be a surprise to no one. On the other hand, I did everything I could. And that's a comfort to me. If that doesn't describe you, one of your listeners, fix it. Don't let another thing go wrong where you didn't do everything that you could to protect other people, to protect yourself, to do the right thing. Buddha, one of the guidelines is to do right work.
Yeah.
Meaning, no matter how much money they offer you, you're not going to participate in something that makes the world a better place or that harms other human beings. If you didn't do everything you could, this is the moment to make sure that doesn't happen again.
You were the right person to talk to today. I am so grateful that you were able to do it with me. Thank you so much. And I will continue to lean on you and reference you and tape interviews with you as much as I possibly can, as much as you're willing to do. Thank you.
Be kind, everybody. As the Dalai Lama says, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible.
And there you go. Celeste Headlee, so great. So happy to have gotten her on. I hope you appreciate her. Let her know you heard her. Get her books, support her, follow her on Blue Sky and Threads, and learn more about her work in the show notes. And now finally, one of my favorites and another guy I needed to talk to this week is David Rothkopf. You can go support him, subscribe to his work at his Substack, Need to Know, rothkopf.substack.com. Of course, listen to him on Deep State Radio. I hope you appreciate my third and final conversation of today's show. There's David Rothkopf, one of the other people I really wanted to talk to today. He's already written a couple of things. I had listeners referencing what was said on the Deep State Radio podcast, which he hosts, and I'm very happy to see you today. Thank you for joining me.
It's always a pleasure, Pete. How are you?
I am hanging in there. I feel like I know what I'm supposed to do in terms of what my purpose is. How are you? You were going to change direction if Kamala won, I thought.
I was.
In terms of your career, you were thinking about doing different things. You wrote that in your piece, I felt. No?
No, I don't think so. I have no plans to change anything that I'm doing. I think that in terms of this kind of information businesses that you and I talk about most frequently, the need for them has only, if anything, increased over the course of the next 4 years.
Yes.
I think it's important for people to have forums to go and connect with one another in. And I think it's going to be important to make sure the word gets out. And honestly, I think it's harder and harder to do what authoritarians used to do in the olden days with the very distributed world of new media.
Yeah. So
yeah, go on.
About that, what are your concerns that all of the platforms that you post on are going to be available in the way that they have been, whether it be television, traditional television and radio and newspaper, much less what we're mainly using, which is podcasting, videos, YouTube, and social media? Do you worry about in a Project 2025 world that not only are those platforms going to be shut down or only certain people will be allowed to use them? I don't even know. I haven't really thought that much about it. So
I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I think we certainly need to be wary because of things that Trump and people close to Trump have said. Having said that, Trump is a defective character in certain respects, but his defects are prioritized. For Trump, number one is the grift. He's always about the upside before he gets to the downside, I think. And although he sounded very embittered for a long time, it's because I think he's been under legal pressure, and this re-election bid has had a kind of existential element to it. And so everybody opposed him was posing a direct threat to him. He's won a big victory here, and he's very likely to control the Senate and control the House. Because he won the popular vote as well as the electoral vote, he is going to be seen within the Republican Party as being stronger than ever before. And I don't think he's going to get a lot of people pushing back on him. And so I think he's going to be able to focus more on the upside than the downside, on the grift, on the how do he and those close to him, the Elon Musks and others, how do they make money? How do they reduce their taxes? How do they get rid of regulations? That kind of thing. Are there going to be crackdowns on his enemies and enemies lists and using the military and all that stuff? I don't know. Maybe. And it's, again, something that we need to be wary of. But I don't think we should borrow trouble either. I don't think we should go into this and say, he said X, Y, and Z, and therefore we should hunker down and get into our combat positions. I think we should be ready. I think we should be truthful. And I think we need to see how things evolve.
I appreciate your writing and leadership and thought process, integrity and credibility as much now as I ever have. Your most recent piece is titled Sad, Angry, and Undaunted. We must turn our attention to the work that lies ahead. And my first question is, part of that work is diagnosing what happened. And we're about to see we already are seeing a lot of different blame as to why she lost. She should have done something more for Palestinian American voters. She tacked too far to the right with Elizabeth Cheney. She wasn't progressive enough. We could talk about her just being a woman or a black woman or whatever. But I feel like that a lot of those things are wrong, and that it has a lot to do with no matter who the candidate was, they were going to lose, or in how they ran their campaign, they were going to lose to Donald Trump because of the people he had on his side, the lies that he told, and what people believed. What do you think about all these think pieces that are coming out that are trying to diagnose what happened? How much of the work is that alone?
Trying to stop them is like trying to stop the sun from rising in the morning. They're gonna come, right? And I think I tend to be sympathetic to what you said. I think many of the diagnoses are tangential to the big issues. There is some truth in all of them, and there are more. I'm inside the Beltway. Some people are like, she relied too heavily on, or her campaign, not her, relied too heavily on virtual outreach rather than door-to-face outreach or in the early parts of the campaign, or they didn't invest enough money in Latinos, and they didn't invest enough money into Black Americans, or they went over too far in favor of the Liz Cheney stuff and not in terms of mobilizing the base. And each one of those things, given the results, you can see why they're being raised. She got, 14 million votes less than Joe Biden did in 2020. And that was the election. If she'd gotten half of those votes, she would have won. If she'd gotten a quarter of those votes, she probably would have won. Or a third of them. And so you got to ask yourself, where did they go? Why did they go?
Sure.
And I think that's a legitimate question. But let me say two other things. One, your point about the outcome not being defined by all these things, I think is right, although perhaps I think it for a different reason. There are elections that are change elections. There are moments in history when the predisposition of the electorate is to move on from the current administration. And it could have been Joe Biden, who would have done a much, much poorer job, I believe, campaigning than she did. Could have been her. But anybody who was associated with the Biden administration, which took the country through a period of adjustment in the wake of the COVID crisis, was likely to be seen as part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And I'm not sure that could have been overcome. For the same reason, I think 4 years of Donald Trump, provided we still have elections, is going to give a lot of impetus to whoever is the Democratic candidate. And we saw that in 2020. This guy talks one game and then he delivers something else and it alienates people. And if I were Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or Josh Shapiro or Wes Moore, I would be thinking, okay, let's keep our heads down and stay focused. There's an opportunity to fix the party here, which gets me to my second point, which I briefly will make. And that is, a lot of people are talking about messaging. Not enough people are talking about listening. I live in a place where there are Trump signs around and stuff, and it's very easy to go by them and think these extremists, they're crazy. But in this last election, there were more of them than us. And they're not, some of what they do is racist, and some of what they do is anti-democratic, and some of what they do is misogynist, and certainly Trump is all of those things. But there's a question, which is why? They're not evil people out there. They're regular people who just want to have a better life. Why do they think a con artist with a terrible track record is more likely to give them a better life than an administration that did a lot of good in the past 4 years? That's a hard question.
Do you think?
But I think it's the core question.
But I want to, maybe this is disagreeing. I don't know if that's the question that they're asking, who's going to give me a better life? I feel like a lot of people want to vote for not, or if I were to answer it this way, a better life for them is to watch people they disagree with, don't like, be in pain. Cruelty is the point. A lot of voters just like this guy because he's a bully, because they're bullies. It's not about their future, their security, or their finances for everybody. Sometimes it feels like they vote for him and candidates like him because they're so mean and they like that.
That doesn't conform to my view of human nature.
Okay.
I think there are bad actors in there. I'm not defending the white supremacists and the Aryan Nation, the neo-Nazis, the Proud Boys, or those characters. The huge percentage of Latinos or African-American men or others who voted, was there racism or misogyny coloring some of their views? There was, and I think we're not gonna get over that. But if you want to win elections, you have to think about what motivates people. And if your assumption is that half the electorate is motivated by their character flaws, you're never getting them. And you're never going to understand what they're going to respond to. And then exclusively, all you've got left is turn out your base. Now, clearly, the Democrats did not turn out their base. Clearly, that was disastrous. Clearly, I think they overfocused on the Liz Cheney side of this thing. But I don't think this is all about who wins elections. I think it's about how do we have a successful country. And I don't think you have a successful country if you say, I'm a blue stater and go fuck the red staters, right, or I'm a red stater and go fuck the blue staters.
Two quick final questions, which are, do you give any thought or merit to any conspiracy theory around the votes? How did he get so many more votes, or that somebody interfered, a foreign actor or an algorithm or anything like that?
First of all, we know that foreign actors interfered, right? We know that they spread disinformation. We know that Russians were behind some of these bomb threats and other kinds of things that occurred on Election Day. We know that it was the intention of Russian intelligence to interfere. But with this, as far as the specific issues of the vote count goes, look, I was as shocked by the outcome as anybody else. I followed the same things. Indeed, I had access to people right in the middle of the campaign, and I was surprised by what happened, and I think they were. And it was so out of whack with what people's expectations were. The things didn't happen that you expected to happen, right? There was a gender gap, but it didn't really cut to her favor. She got the youth vote, but he got as much of the youth vote as she did. She got Liz Cheney and so forth, but the crossover within the Republican Party wasn't there. A lot of things you thought were going to happen didn't happen. The energy of her campaign did not produce the kind of big voter engagement and turnout that we wanted it to. So when you get all that happening, then you're like disoriented. This world isn't the world that I thought it was. And I think one consequence of that is to say there must have been something fishy going on, because that explains the complete failure of all the other pre-election analyses better than saying we dropped the ball on all those counts. But having said that, and I don't rule anything out where there is no evidence whatsoever of that. And until there's evidence of it, I don't think it's super productive to have a discussion about it.
Do you think the Biden administration should do anything in this lame duck period? I've heard all kinds of suggestions being made, including not only the Biden administration, but the Department of Justice or Jack Smith releasing all the files or whatever. Is there anything that you think would be effective or responsible for the current administration to do before the fascist takes over?
I don't know that there's anything the current administration can do that will stop the next administration from doing whatever they want.
Right.
Are there facts that could be released that might be useful information to everybody? Yeah. If there are things that you think they're related to potential future threats and it might mitigate the threat, fine. If it's spite, not so fine.
Right.
And I think both President Biden and Vice President Harris yesterday said, look, we got to have a smooth transition. We're going to do this the right way. They did it the wrong way. And I think that's the right response. I think people need to be prepared for Trump following through on some of his promises that are threats to our system. And people need to be ready to mobilize, take action, take strong action with regard to all of those things. Going to say, you can't do this, because he can undo that right away. And that's a lot of those suggestions that I've seen. And he's not, it's just a bitterness and reactiveness. And I feel as angry and sad as anybody has done about this. But I really think the stakes are so high that we've got to say to ourselves, how do I prepare to move forward in a constructive way? Step one has got to be, get me the facts. Step two has got to be organize, be connected to other people, have access to information. Step three has got to be, let's have the resolve to do that. And let's not go launching ourselves at phantom threats. Let's know what is possible, but let's focus ourselves on the things as they materialize. Yeah. And just as a footnote to this whole thing, if I may, I know that you disdain crudeness, but a giant fuck you to the Merrick Garland defenders out there who said, oh, Merrick's got this. Don't worry. Don't criticize him. He's doing the right thing. Did he ever drop the ball? Did he ever drop the ball? And for all of those who said justice moves slowly, it took him less than 24 hours to say we're dropping the federal cases against the president. Jack Smith is withdrawing from this process. He did that in 24 hours after the election, when 4 years after January 6th, there was no prosecution of the organizers, when a case that would have had anybody else in jail regarding the theft of national secrets was brought to the wrong venue and ultimately allowed to be slow walked. He did a miserable job on all of this. And so when I hear the name Jack Smith, it triggers a lot for me, because that, as I think Susan Glasser of The New Yorker said in a social media post yesterday, if Merrick Garland had done his job, I'm paraphrasing, if Merrick Garland had done his job, Trump would be a retiree sitting at home shouting at the TV. He would not have been a candidate in this.
I appreciate that last comment. A lot of people are talking about the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, and I think that's a really important point. So I'm glad you made it. All right. I love you. I love talking to you. I love reading you. I really am happy that you're in my life, and I look forward to talking to you as much as I always have. I appreciate you so much.
It's mutual. And by the way, to the people who are listening to your podcast, I saw a number of your responses in the wake of the election. And a lot of them were, I thought, far more appropriate to the moment than that of a lot of people who are in your or our line of work, which was, how are you feeling? How do we get through this? How do we help each other through this? How do we find ourselves in a constructive place at the other side of this? How do we not let our anger get the best of us or our hurt get the best of us? That was extremely sensitive and I thought right on, and credit to you for it.
That means a lot to me. I think that's my role. I don't want to get cheap. I don't want to let my anger take over or try to do something to get clicks or something. My role is, I think, to try to figure out how to help folks and fight apathy and bring people together that we've done here. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me. Okay, I will let you go then, and I will talk to you soon.
Peace.
All right. Wajahat Ali, Celeste Headlee, David Rothkopf. Are you sobered up? I hope you appreciated the first part of the show. Please let me know your feedback. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Let me know what direction you want me to go in here with this daily podcast. I'm going to produce the hell out of some hopefully inspiring, positive, helpful, resourceful content, and I can't do it without your support. Go write a rating and review, if you haven't, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That matters a lot. That's something simple you can do to help support the work that we're doing together each and every day. Obviously, if you're not a paid subscriber, I can't do it without you. It's free, but it isn't cheap. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick. I hope to see you tonight at 8 p.m. If you listened this far to the end of the show, you, my friend, are a bumblebee. That's the little nickname, the cute little nickname I've coming up with the most loyal of listeners who listen all the way to the end. And I also think you might have a job that takes you on the road a lot. Anyway, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I hope to see you tonight at 8 p.m. Be strong, be well, find peace, find joy, be the change you want to see in the world. John Carroll has been his whole life and career. He writes and performs all the music on the show. He's an Emmy Award-winning musician, an original member of Starland Vocal Band, and we're so happy that he's in our community. Go support him, johncarroll.org. Send him your money, buy his music, support talented artists in all the ways you can. We need them now more than ever. Take it away, John.
Start making sense and you stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans for a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand